Whenever I say it out loud, whenever I tell someone about it, the first thing that crosses my mind is how stupid it sounds. I mean, I'm a grown man now, and even though I was only 19 back then, I was technically a full-grown man even then. At that age, you're not supposed to be scared of stupid stuff like that, especially stuff that isn't even meant to be scary. That's the first thing that crosses my mind. But then, slowly but surely, I remember. I remember what it was like to work those long shifts, glancing back at the thing over and over, what it was like to be alone with it, and of course, I remember what happened in the end. Saying this out loud isn't going to get any easier, so I guess I should just come out and say it. I was scared of Crumbly the Clown. Not of the character in general, which was basically Crumb Burger's ripoff of Ronald McDonald. Not even the guy who they sometimes paid to dress up as him to meet the kids at the door of the Crumb Burger I worked at, even though he was a bit creepy for other reasons and always smelled strongly of booze. I wasn't even freaked out by the life-size statue of the grinning, face-painted idiot that stood by the counter with that eerily permanent grin. I was scared by the giant Crumbly. The huge face, with its gaping, open mouth that covered the entire left wall of the restaurant close to the toilets. Morton, for whatever reason, has never had a McDonald's. You would think with the population it has that the town would be able to support such a chain, but for some unknown reason, it just never made it that far. The McD company clearly happy to have the nearest drive-thru at the end of the motorway before you reached the country roads that led into Morton. We had a KFC for a while, but that also went under, which I suppose proves the point. The closest thing that Morton ever got to McDonald's was Crumb Burger. With its clearly stolen mascot, Crumbly, definitely not Ronald McDonald, the clown. The thing that I was scared of, the huge face that stretched from floor to ceiling, was actually made of fiberglass and carved to make it look three-dimensional. It was an image of Crumbly's head, with a huge smile, his stupid grinning mouth stretched wide open so that an enormous black space the size of a door frame was outlined by his painted red lips. I know it was supposed to be jolly and fun, but to me it looked as if Crumbly had just bitten into some poor creature and still wore the stains of blood-smeared flesh. I hated that face from the very first time I saw it. I know what you're thinking. It's plastic and fiberglass. Just a head fixed to the wall. A happy-looking ornament. It sounds like nothing, but just imagine it. Imagine the smiling, too wide grin of a clown, its eyes looking downward over the cheeks, the face white as snow and hair like blood streaked above it. Imagine that face blown up to fill an entire wall, the mouth gaping open and threatening to swallow. Now imagine it's nighttime, that you are alone standing in front of that massive face, and even though you tell yourself it's your imagination, that what you're imagining isn't possible, you can feel it, watching you as you move. I suppose it was meant to look funny, or even friendly perhaps, but it wasn't. A face on that wall, stretching from the ceiling to the floor, reminded me, from the very first time I saw it, of the entrance of some funhouse you might see on the cover of a horror novel, or the killer clown on the front of a VHS tape you'd rented from the horror section at Blockbuster. I knew it was supposed to be Crumbly the Clown, but to me, the massive face was a vision of every childhood nightmare of a flesh-eating clown that I'd ever had. Whether it was some weird hangover from being a kid, I don't know. I thought once that maybe the image, the fact that the mouth was so huge and could just swallow a person whole, reminded me of a Jack and the Beanstalk story my mom had read me when I was a kid. The storybook had an image of the ogre on it. His face twice the size of a man, his curly black beard hanging down, and his mouth ready to gobble up anyone stupid enough to get close. I loved the story, but though I never admitted it, that picture of the giant with the gaping mouth frightened me. Maybe the face reminded me of that early childhood fear, I thought. Whatever it was, I didn't like it. During the day shifts at Crumbly Burgers, things were usually fine. I'd be too busy running around after customers in the seating area, mopping up spills and clearing trays, helping some folks to carry their orders and fetching extra portions of stuff when the customers asked to be scared. Most of the time, I wouldn't even notice the huge face behind me. Every now and again, though, in a quiet moment, when I had my back to the thing and was sweeping tables or emptying trays, I'd feel this weird pressure on my shoulders, and I'd know straight away that it was watching me. Sometimes I'd turn around quickly and actually try to catch its eyes moving, catch some flicker or twitch in the lips. There was never any movement, at least not in the daytime. Night was a different matter. As the head attendant and supervisor for the front of the house crew, I would be mostly responsible for checking over the seating area at the end of each evening and putting everything in order before people came on to shift the following day. That's when I'd really feel it. Usually the others would be behind the counter, cleaning things up or counting the money in the tills and filling in the paperwork. I would be on the other side of the restaurant, alone. I'd slowly, carefully push my mop around. The light would be low at that point, and the glass front of the store would be pressed up against a wall of darkness that seemed always to be pushing against the surface to get in. It'd be quiet too. Over on the other side of the restaurant, there would be the odd clang of coins or the sound of muffled voices. But over here, in the seating area, where the shadows were long and all of the sound seemed to have been sucked from the room, it was horribly quiet. That's when I'd feel it the most. Feel the face's massive eyes creeping over my skin, always suspecting that if I was to turn around, those huge eyes would follow me around the room. I know it doesn't make sense, but I knew, somehow, that it was watching me, and more than that it was hungry. I remember waking once from a horrible dream in which I looked down and saw the clown's enormous mouth, its massive wall-sized face at the end of my bed, and felt myself being dragged though I kicked and screamed, fighting against the covers, thrashing and flailing for purchase. Closer and closer to the red-rimmed mouth, filled with murderous, hanging teeth that waited, hungered, to chew and devour me as the clown continued to smile. Sometimes I would look at the black, the space painted in the front of the mouth. In the daylight, you could see clearly that it was black paint. You could even sort of make out the brickwork beneath the paint. But at night, the clown's fixed smile seemed warped around a space that seemed to go on forever, extending back beyond the surface of the wall and descending down into God knew what. In this half-lit and pressing darkness, the black space of the mouth looked like a bottomless pit, a fleshy gullet, and a throat that, if you got too close to it, would close around you like the stretching mouth of some giant snake and slowly swallow you whole. I never mentioned how much I hated the head. I was embarrassed. Wouldn't you be? It was only 3 months into the job that my colleague Andy, another crew member on the front of the house team, explained why he didn't want to do the cleanup on his own. "I'm not staying out here with that thing," Andy announced bluntly. "What do you mean with that thing?" I asked, though I already knew what he meant. "That face. That creepy clown face. No way, man. I swear a guy who used to work here called Tom told me once that he saw that thing's eyes move, that it was watching him when he worked. Another girl called Amy said that she stood too close to it one night when she was out here on her own, real close, with her back turned, and she could feel the thing's breath coming out of that big mouth. Breath on the back of her neck that smelled like rotting meat, and when she turned around, she swore she could hear it laughing. Not in that jolly, crumbly clown way, but in a cruel way, like it was laughing at her and like it knew things." The following day, I confessed to Andy why I too hated the massive face. That it also scared me, and we smiled about it. That night, though, it was my turn to be alone with it again. Then, I didn't smile. I think what made the whole thing worse was the fact that the paint on the face had worn a little, particularly on the teeth. They were mostly square and a sort of beige-white color. In the daylight, the scratches and the black sections revealed my damage, didn't make much of a difference, but at night, they faded into the back of the mouth behind and cut triangle slashes into the white, making the teeth look fractured and pointed, stabbing downward like fangs. Maybe it was what Andy said to me, maybe the power of suggestion. But that night, for the first time and only time, I heard a voice from that mouth. I was emptying some trays into the trash and had taken my eyes off the huge image for just a second, when from somewhere behind me, the voice came. It was a low, gurgling voice that seemed to be somehow speaking and laughing at the same time. But it wasn't a pleasant laugh. It was manic, insane.
Come closer, little boy. Come and play with Crumbly. I've got plenty of treats for you. Come a little closer.
In the final word, I think for just a second, I heard the thing's real voice. A wet, slithering voice, full of evil and hunger. I turned slowly toward the face, half expecting to see Andy making some strange noises, using a drink's cup as a megaphone. Instead, I saw the black of the mouth, and to my complete disbelief, the thick, meaty tongue, pink and swollen, that had snaked and slithered out from within toward me. I screamed, dropped my mop and ran, out of the front doors of the restaurant, out into the road, and didn't stop running for 10 minutes. The next day, I handed in my notice at Crumb Burger. The manager had to come outside to meet me, because I refused to step foot inside and never have since. Over the next few weeks, I sent letter after letter to the branch manager, to the other staff, to Crumb Burger PLC, trying to warn them. What could I do? What would you do? Nobody would believe me, and every time I thought of the face, I thought of children, playing happily before it, and of the tongue reaching out, curling around them, dragging them into the dark of that muscular throat, those huge, chomping teeth. But the letters did no good. That branch of Crumb Burger closed in autumn of last year. During the summer, customers and staff had complained about a horrendous smell within the seating area that the management assumed was coming from the customer toilets, the pipes for which ran directly behind the huge face. It was only when the blocked pipes were opened up, in the space where the black expanse of the clown's mouth had been, that people began taking me seriously. Because that was when they found the bodies. They were, the police said, the bodies of animals that must have somehow gotten caught in or fallen into the pipes or drainage system. Though even they could not explain why the meat looked chewed, partially digested and stuffed in chunky, rotting pieces into the width of the pipes, almost as if the hard cylinders were a throat that had connected to the mouth, a mouth that filled most of a wall and had red painted lips, smiling all around it.